very complicated sorting out who did what, where, and why. Okay, let's talk about the I classification. It was created 40 years ago to list bodies which were multiple sources of impairment. And the most recognized example, because it's a Superfund site, is Silver Bow Creek. The goal is to try and improve these water bodies and monitor them routinely. Lord knows we've monitored this site. There are only 3 water bodies in the state with the I classification. And the question is, do the substantial efforts at improving the water quality in Silver Bow Creek over the past 10 to 20 years warrant consideration of reclassification to a more protected class? Well, here is the actual legal language for the I class. This is 1736-28 ARMs. The goal of the state of Montana is to have these waters fully support the following uses: drinking, culinary, and food processing purposes after conventional treatment, bathing, swimming, recreation, growth and propagation of fishes, and associated aquatic life, waterfowl, fur and agricultural and industrial water supply. That's every use that's defined by the state of Montana. Okay? So what they're saying here is the goal is to make the I-class water meet all the intended uses that the state of Montana recognizes. And then it says an analysis will be performed on each of these water bodies for a new triennial standards review period, determine the factors preventing or limiting attainment of the designated uses. Based on these analyses, the specific standards listed below will be adjusted to reflect any improvements which have occurred in water quality as a result of water quality control of non-point source pollution. Okay. What's ended up happening is that there's so much data on Silver Bow Creek that every 3 to 5 years we take all the data, we put a big pile and look at it and go, wow, that's a lot of stuff. I don't know what we should do. And we work on it to make the decision, has there been enough change that we should reconsider classification? What they talk about in the rest of this document, I'm not going to go into, is 2 pages of narrative standards on things like turbidity, pH, temperature, etc., that are specific, very specific, but the data collected doesn't necessarily reflect how we would make the assessment for that specific standard. For instance, for temperature. Now, the B1 and C1 classifications have underlined the differences between the classes. So B1 basically means all the uses that you just saw listed, whereas C1 has dropped suitable for drinking, culinary, food processing purposes after conventional treatment. So one of the classifications that could be considered is B1 or C1, depending on whether we want to consider drinking water use for Silver Bow Creek. Now, to consider it, it's after conventional treatment. Okay, now we've got to go to the legal guys. What constitutes conventional treatment? Okay, and it involves 4 processes. I always have to write this down because I don't remember all of them. Always get 3 out of 4. Coagulation, filtration, sedimentation, and flotation. So if the contaminant can be removed with one of those 4 processes, it's considered conventional treatment. Okay? And we'll come back to this in a little bit. So the other part of this that's important to look at is that growth and propagation of salmoniid fishes and associated aquatic life. Okay? So the C1 class, B1 and C1, have exactly identical language for growth and propagation of salmoniid fishes. Okay? If we go to the Series 2 classifications, B2, C2, they have marginal propagation of salmoniid fishes and associated aquatic life. And same thing between B and C, we've eliminated drinking water use. So if you say C, you've eliminated drinking water use. If you put a 2 behind it, you're saying that it's marginal salmoniid use, okay, in population. So the I class is just, I'd like to see the water be this way. It would sure be nice if it was this. Okay? When we move to any of these other classes, it becomes much more rigid. It's essentially increasing the protection for that water body. Okay, so what we are currently considering is what we, by the EPA, consider an upgrade. Anything is an upgrade from I class. Okay? So, what classification is most appropriate? B1 meets all state water quality requirements. I'll show you why in a little bit, why that's possible. Because we can still list a water body for specific contaminants, okay? And it will still meet the criteria for a B1 water body, okay? Because it has that potential, okay? Remember we've talked earlier about the potential of a water body meeting a need, or meet a use. So if it can meet, there's the potential for it to meet a use, we can increase the level of protection to reflect that. Okay? Okay, core issues. Will it support drinking water? If so, then B1 or B2 can be considered. And what constitutes conventional treatment? Now, if you bring a wastewater engineer in here and you say, I'd like the Butte plant to remove all metals, it's going to scream and cry and wail and be unhappy. Okay? But the fact of the matter is that processes which exist within the Butte plant can and will remove most of these metals. Will they meet discharge requirements of DEQ 7? Well, that's set by permit. And here comes the next phase of this. How does a permit reflect classification? The receiving water body affects the interpretation of a permit. So the higher the protection level that is provided by the classification, the more strict the discharge requirements become for an NPDES permit. So this is one of the reasons why it's important to have a proper classification. If it will not support drinking water use, fully define why not, and consider C1 or C2. At the core of this issue is, how do we assess aquatic life through usage? What indicators should we use? Should we be using mackerel and vertebrates? Should we be using fish? A combination of both? We need multiple lines of evidence. That's the phrase that the EPA uses to talk about how you reach a decision. Using simultaneous, parallel lines of evidence to come to a conclusion. And how do we verify whether some amount of use of the water body is marginal for growth? What constitutes marginal? If I bring 3 fisheries biologists into the room, I promise I can't get a decision on what constitutes marginal. Okay? That's with just 3. Remember the 28 groups I had to deal with? Okay? Good luck. So, that's a real big issue, this issue of margin. Okay? So a lot of this language that's in law has a big impact on how we do these interpretations. Okay, what are some of our options? Well, we just look at it and say, it's still too complicated. There's too much going on here. We just want to wait a while. Let things settle down, see where we end up. Which would leave the I classification until more of the restoration work is completed. Now, some of the drawbacks that I have concerns about, if we do that, relate to some of the issues that the previous speaker brought up. Like, okay, we peel back the onion, the plant is taking care of the metals, we'll say, but now their ammonia discharge levels are so high it's toxic to the fish. Okay, guess what? I-class doesn't regulate ammonia. Okay? Now, if I bring another classification to bear, any other classification, there becomes a requirement to control and quantify ammonia. Okay, so I'll use that as an example of why you want to go to a more protective class. You can consider the C1 classification if the socioeconomic costs of water treatment for drinking water are considered too high. And there is a, I've got a book over here, nice small book by somebody. There we go. That's how you do a socioeconomic analysis for UAA. It's about 900 pages. Okay? And it's a lot more work than that. It's free. So it's a big deal to do a socioeconomic analysis. I'm dreading it, but it may need to be done to justify whether a B1 classification is appropriate as opposed to a C1 or C2 classification. Okay. Third option is consider B1 classification, as Blacktail Creek has B1 status, as do other segments of the Clark Fork River, specifically the upper Clark. And West Slope cutthroat populations and distributions have increased significantly, but we have to maintain the listings for impairment, which is part of the TMDL issue, okay? And would be addressed in a TMDL for the silver lake. And we have to write one, so it's not a question of, oh, well, everything's perfect, we don't have to write a TMDL. We know there's continuing problems that have to be addressed. TMDL is just a plan on how you're going to address it.
Rod, for the lay folks, would you explain what the TMDL is?
Okay, I'm sorry. And guys, if I use jargonese, throw something at me or raise your hand or whatever. TMDL, total maximum daily load. Okay? And it's a big document. Brought one along to show you. Somewhere. There we go. Okay. This is the Upper Clark Fork River Tributary Sediment, Metals, and Temperature TMDL. Okay, 700 and some pages. Very detailed analysis. We were just discussing during the break that there was a bunch of data that we didn't use. Okay, it would have been nice if we had it all available in the same format, same database, etc. to access. But at the time, it wasn't. So a bunch of data got left out, and that happens a lot. Okay, way more than I wish it did. Okay, but I'll just pass these around so you look at it. Massive analysis of what the maximum daily load that a given water body can carry without damage to the most sensitive use. That's another phrase you hear a lot. Most sensitive use. What does that mean? Well, you talk about one of the uses being fishes and associated aquatic life. Okay? That's typically the most sensitive use. For instance, I'm not going to, unless I'm making semiconductors, chips or something, it's not likely that industrial water use is going to end up being the most sensitive use. Nor is agriculture. You just want to put water on the crops, not kill it with lead or arsenic or whatever. Okay? So most, I would say 80–90% of the time, aquatic life becomes our most sensitive use and the parameter which we look at most closely in evaluating whether uses are being met and the classification is good. That's nice. You get an idea of what a TMDL looks like. So, what's right? We don't know because we're still in the data analysis and collection phase of this project. Okay, we're going to talk about the sequence of events here at the end of this whole fandango, and I'll describe to you, the whole process that we'll go through in terms of public comment, public input, working with coalition groups, etc., to make sure we don't lose something or miss something along the way. Another big issue is looking at the big picture. Now, the Clark Fork Coalition did a nice job in this document of talking about watershed-wide focus, and then parsing it out. They're going to focus on the headwaters and reach A, right? Okay, in their document that they wrote. And I think that's a great approach. Really good way for an NGO to work with the public that's involved with it to better define the project. And I shamelessly stole the map right out of their report. And so I probably breached some patent or copyright or whatever. But here is the I-class segment right here coming from Butte. And here's another segment, and another segment, another segment, another segment. So there's actually 5 segments that make up the Upper Clarks Fork. Now these are defined hydrogeologically.